Research, Director Rashid Wali Janjua. Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua holds a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from NUST. He is a graduate of Canadian Forces College and holds a master's degree in Security and Defense Management from Royal Military College, Kingston, Ontario. He has served in various command and instructional assignments, including Pakistan Military Academy and Command and Staff College. He has held the command assignments of an infantry brigade, headquarter corps, the command assignments of an infantry brigade, headquarter corps engineers, planning cell of Chief of Army Staff Secretariat, Military Training Directorate and Director Works, and Chief Engineer Pakistan Navy. I would now request Director Research to please address the audience members.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ambassador Inam, Chairman, Board of Governors, IPRI. Ambassador Durrani, Special Representative of Pakistan on Afghanistan. General Hilal, former Defense Secretary. General Asghar Nawaz, President IPRI, of course. And distinguished audience. A very warm welcome. This is not an address as mentioned by MOC. It's just a brief introduction. And I would not like to interpose for very long between you and excellent insights of Ambassador Durrani, which are always invaluable. So whenever we wish to get a flavor of Afghanistan, Ambassador Durrani is the touchstone. And he has always been a mentor, a guide, and the veritable oracle to which we always refer whenever we come into any kind of confusion about Afghanistan. It's a high-sounding title, Recrudescence, but when we set about selecting the title, no title came closer to this onomatopoeic kind of a title. Recrudescence means that this thing has been coming up again and again, and this is the latest rise. We know that this phenomena has bedeviled Pakistan since long. A series of operations like Al-Mizan from 2002 to 2004-05 were followed by other army-led operations. Operation Rahe-Haq, Rahe-Rast, which was called First Battle and Second Battle of Swat. Then Operation Rahe-Najat, which sanitized South Waziristan. And then Zarb-e-Azb, which liberated over, I think, 1,600 kilometers, which was virtually in control of Taliban. And 3,500 hardcore terrorists were killed at the cost of very precious lifeblood of our martyrs. And I'm glad there are people who are sitting who have participated in those operations, and General Hilal is one whom I know was in TAL. He was commanding a brigade and he has got a first-hand experience. So people have paid a very heavy price to price open the spaces for the civilization, to get back these areas, push back TTP, but somehow, unfortunately, the TTP menace has again come to haunt us lately. So from there flows the motivation of this book. Sorry, I would be remiss if I don't introduce the team. On leftmost is Mr. Shiraz, Nurulan, myself, Mr. Nawaz, and Furqan, who's got now moving. Would you please stand up, each one of you? So a very warm round of applause for the team. Okay. So please sit down. Motivation. So motivation is this, whatever we could garner through our research on this slide. You can see the year-wise attacks and the casualties. 1,215 attacks in 2023. They were followed by a slight dip in 2023 compared to 2022. But then from 2024 onwards, to date, there have been more than 150 hardcore, casualties and 450 casualties of TTP. So this graph is still going up. Our research stopped somewhere in May. So we'll show you more. The contents. The book is divided into 6 chapters. It starts with the historical evolution of insurgency. Then the evolution of social environment. Now, social environment, you see the whole lineaments of environment has been uprooted. It was a FCR controlled, PA administered, and Mashran and Malik dominated area. It was a stable society. So this stability was disturbed because of Afghan war, then war on terror by America, and now, after the Americans left, the post-US withdrawal, which is an organic change, and that is such a cataclysmic change that after the Americans left, what we call in Urdu a johri tabdili aa gayi hai halat. So which people are not, appreciating. Many people still live in the past and they still refer to the old templates. But post 2021, there is a fundamental change and shift in the socio-political environment. So all this was captured, and all these chapters act as useful primers for anybody who wishes to have a flavor. The book is not written in a very academic and very abstruse kind of format. It's a very simple, easy to read, digestible, full of facts, and all these facts were garnered by the field input. So it is less academic and more field oriented. And prescriptive remedies at the end in the shape of conclusions and recommendations have been given. In fact, that is the warp and woof of the book. The most important 2 chapters are the last 2 chapters. The methodology. So we went around interviewing people, and all important stakeholders were interviewed, which included the government servants, KP administration, police. We had long, exhaustive sessions with Akbar Hayat Saab, who is the IG police, and it's a very rare that such access is given to any researchers. And he laid bare his heart in front of us and gave access to certain data and information which is normally not available to normal researchers. KP Civil Administration, Chief Secretary, Home Minister, and the Peshawar Corps was, their assistance was invaluable, as we could go and discuss these things with the field formations in Kohat and all the Inspector Generals of Frontier Corps. So coming over to quick recap of the major findings. Causes of the TTP resurgence. Now, first cause that we could identify was the administrative, policing, judicial vacuum. At this point of time, only army is holding these merged districts, which we call ex-FATA. There is no civil administration worth the name. There is virtually no policing, and all the judicial offices are operating outside the merged districts into the settled areas. You must have witnessed an attack lately on judges near Tanak. So that's a clear manifestation of the mess that we are in. Now this administrative vacuum, earlier on these areas were administered by a very careful balance of Rivaj, Sharia Muftiyan system, FCR, and by a very effective political agent system. Now, when that system was uprooted and dismantled, the alternative system has not yet been created, despite the merger that has been affected. So, practically, constitutional merger has taken place, but financial and administrative merger has not taken place. So you can imagine in a vacuum, all the non-state actors can start operating, all the criminals gangs can start operating, and people get frustrated because there is no justice. If the justice is being dispensed by non-state actors, then people are likely to get recruited to their cause. Lack of long-term vision and consistent policies. Now, it's been a veritable roller coaster policy making. We have been going back on the same policies that we pursued earlier, then we have been making a complete volte-face. So this lack of consistency, especially amongst the civil military leadership and the ones who are minding this policy, has resulted in a kind of a ambivalence which has not redounded to the benefit of stability of this area. Lack of livelihoods. Now this was, if on a scale of 10 to 1, you ask me, I would put it at 9. Wherever there is livelihood, the militancy has gone down precipitously. In the Khyber Agency region around Torkham, where we know that a lot of illegal activities also take place, but because economic activities is there, it disincentivizes the violence. And I'll give you an example of 87 coal mines in Dar Adam Khel. Now, ever since those coal mines were introduced, economic activity was generated. The arms business, which used to be the mainstay of the people, has gone down to 10%. So it's quite a revolutionary change in that area. Then there is an area which is known by an acronym ZJL between Kurram and Orakzai. So that area was the nightmare of GOC cohort formation. They always used to face a lot of trouble. All desperados, all militants used to congregate because this was a very difficult area and mountainous kind of a terrain. So that militants have been weaned off from militancy because of 40 coal mines. Now 40 coal mines is nothing, but it's a complete livelihood opportunity for 40 set of families. And similarly, if you see the hotbed of militancy now are not the erstwhile North Waziristan and South Waziristan. It's just a triangle around the settled areas and the frontier regions of Tanak, Lucky Marwat and DI Khan, which are abetted by 3 provinces, Balochistan, KP, in even parts of Punjab. And ahead of frontier region Tank, Lucky Marwat and DI Khan, there are areas like Daraban, which are desolate. There is no livelihood opportunity. And those become a favorite habitat of criminals. And the non-state actors find that as very easy recruiting ground. So this is a very, very important. And integration of merged districts. Now integration is not just making of roads and digital connectivity. Integration is developing the economic stakes. Since centuries, areas like Bajor, areas like Khyber Agency, Tira Valley, they had developed a whole ecosystem of reliance on illegal activity, cross-border smuggling, narco trafficking with Afghanistan, and so much so that there were in till 90s, the wagon drivers used to say Jalalabad from Bajor. So there was no difference between these territories in Pakistan. The integration will only happen, economic integration, once the people of that area feel that the produce that they create or the products or the cottage industry products that they make, those find their markets in areas like Charsadda, Swabi, settled districts. So you have to create economic stakes in the settled districts so that people get integrated with our settled districts of KP and Punjab rather than looking to Kabul and Jalalabad. Now this was another cause of recrudescence. Grant of space of TTP to regroup. So contrary to popular perceptions that it was only military that was pushing rapprochement, our research showed that it was a collaborative effort. And even there were certain politicians, Akhundzada Chatan Sahab, for instance, was a very active member of this collaboration. So there was a lot of hope. So this might have been done in good faith, but it did not benefit neither the state nor those merged districts because it boomeranged on us. The TTP, they came up with an unreasonable set of demands, which no country or no state could countenance. And as a result, they got space, they came, they occupied the vacant spaces, and the trust of the tribe was lost. The tribes which had fought with us, which had been weaned off from the militancy, and those who thought that from here onwards, those recalcitrants, those truculent animals will never come back. They came back and the tribe said that, okay, now since they have come back, how can we trust you? So that feeling still persists and it has impacted our intelligence-based operations because the network that TTP manages through browbeating, through climate of fear is still prevalent. Altered environment of Afghanistan. It's another, जिसको मैं जौहरी तब्दीली कहता हूँ, so this is what it is. Now, Afghanistan is being ruled by Afghan interim government, which is essentially theocratic, with the temporal and spiritual authority vested in Kandahar. So despite the best intentioned moderate elements within the Afghan interim government, the last say is of Mullah Hibtullah Khamzada. So there is a model now available with TTP that if they could beat Americans, TTA could beat Americans, we can do the same with Pakistan state. So this has given them a lot of encouragement, and it is as if somebody is orchestrating, somebody is planning financially also, and establishing their bases. We have a set of bases starting with Kunar, Nangarhar, Khost, Paktia, Paktita, and from where the training in suicide bombing, in indoctrination, all sorts of training activities are conducted there. Despite our positive engagement, this link has not been severed with TTP of Afghan interim government. Ecosystem of crime and illegal activities. When we went and discussed with the stakeholders in the Peshawar Corps, in the KP police, KP civil administration, the locals of the area, so everybody had a consensus on this, that this whole illegal, they have coined a term now, illegal spectrum, which means all activities which are cross-border, narco smuggling, vehicle smuggling, smuggling of personnel, and then there are spaces which are held by TTP, and the criminals, they also go and make use of those spaces. So there is a kind of a collaborative arrangement between the two. When that happens, those criminals can be used by TTP, mostly for their own terrorist activity. So this crime and terror network and collaboration, this is very dangerous phenomena. And this criminal enterprise, which we call crime, and we have instituted measures like border control, is being viewed differently there. And in the remedies part, we have given some remedies that we may like to disincentivize this illegal spectrum through certain measures, like reducing the tariffs and subsidies, etc. But controlling this is essential. If you allow this crime, the illegal proceeds can go into any pocket. So coming over to the major findings, perception. So this was most important. I think this was the most important part of the research, which was based on the perception, what people think, people of merged districts. We carried out field surveys. We took 2 samples, and those samples were representative of different age brackets. So areas experiencing reforms, when we asked them in which areas you think reform has taken off, so you can see abysmally low percentages. And all of them, nearly 57% were having a consensus that's hardly any worthwhile reform. Local perception about merger, satisfaction with police. You can see a large percentage which is not satisfied at all. So that explains our conclusion that police is virtually absent. Local courts functioning. You can see a very large percentage which is saying that not effective at all. Local suggestions to improve the justice system. So you can see a very large percentage feels that there is a need for change. Public satisfaction, very large dissatisfaction, this whole pie. Now remedies. A quick recap of the remedies. There is no single silver bullet, and whole of the nation approach is required. First, starting with political ownership. Unless it is politically owned by the federal and the provincial government, and they are in sync, they own the policies which are being pursued by those who are in the field, no sustainable policy will ever take off. Then the policy consistency. There has to be consistency in the policy regardless of the governments that come and go. You cannot start talking to militants one day and stop talking the next day and have another policy. So there has to be a common vision, long-term consistent. So consistency, people may come and go, but this policy consistency needs to be there. Public support. All insurgencies, you have to drain the swamp. The water, the putrid water is the public support, and those fish are the insurgents. If you drain away the support, they cannot survive. So how you garner the public support? Army alone cannot do it, police cannot do it, even civil administration cannot do it. That's the job of the political leadership. To connect with the people, impress upon them the need of the merger initiatives, and to garner the public support for the kinetic and non-kinetic dimensions of the effort that is being done to wean all areas of the militancy, to stabilize and to sanitize these areas of the last vestiges of militancy. Remedies, governance. So administrative vacuum needs to be filled up, and the KP government needs to lead job. Unless we send our very best civil administrators and we establish a very strong network, because at the moment PA system is not there, Rivaj is not there, Sharia and Muftiyan system is not there. So people need a system, and if that system can have some elements of Rivaj, some sprinkling of even a Muftiyan system in the judiciary, so that will stabilize and give them hope. Capacity building of police. So police needs a lot of resources. When we are doing a research, the immediate infusion was 19 billion requirement then. But on a sustainable basis, a lot is required. 87 billion was released back in 2019 for them, but it was done in dribs and drabs. And maximum resources that were promised have not been given. So police is in a very bad shape. It is really in no shape to go and operate training-wise, organization-wise, and capacity-wise. judiciary. So judiciary needs to establish its presence, and the normal legal system that needs to retain some features of Rivaj and I would say some features of Muftiyan system, because land disputes are a very serious issue. 90% of the land there is disputed, and the tribes are fighting amongst themselves. So neither this alternate dispute resolution system helps them, which was established through an act in 2020, neither this new system is helping them. And people say that give us back the old Sharia Muftiyan system, so that was the quickest system to settle the disputes of land. So something needs to be done. This thing cannot be left in limbo. Talks with the TTP, there should be talks only if they lay down the arms, accept the constitution, and any such initiative should have the approval of the parliament and the civilian leadership. Resettlement of IDPs. Now there are still tribes like Madakhel which are in a camp and they have a lot of resentment. Out of total IDPs, 80% have been settled. But 20%, those that are not settled, their voices are the loudest. And then they demand the same infrastructure. Like previously they had a whole ecosystem. For example, during the course of our research, something very interesting emerged. They said that in Miran Shah, there used to be 600 small kiosks and shops. Now, state has rebuilt, but only 100 shops are there. What about 500 then? So, we have to put our development initiatives in sync with the locals' aspirations. Allocation of development funds. So, previously, before merger, the share from the NFC divisible pool was 14.6. After the merger, 5% has been added, but it is not being released. $1 trillion rupees was promised in 2018 after merger, and later on it was pared down to 600 billion, but out of that only 383 billion was released, and out of that release only, I believe, 75 billion has been actually spent. That says a lot about the inefficiency of utilization of these funds. And the grievances are with the civil administration also, police also, and the locals also. Elimination of the ecosystem of organized crime is how it can be removed. We know a lot of efforts are afoot about better border control, single visa entry regime, refugee control, but the best manner in which it could be controlled, I believe, is to reduce those incentives, to disincentivize this illegal trade by reducing the taxes and subsidies and making it easy for the cross-border commerce. The more economic activity is generated, the more livelihoods would be created and people would be weaned off from the militancy. But it's not an easy thing because there are multiple stakeholders. When we say ecosystem, it includes a lot of stakeholders, which include people in the government also, people in the law enforcement agencies also, people in the private business commercial world also. They all have developed a stake into this corrupt system. And severing that would require a very, very strong government and I must say society's will. Now there are, during the course of our research, we came across some 5 lakh non-custom paid vehicles were impounded. The government decided from here onwards, area of Bajod and Mohman from where this activity used to take place will not take place. The government is at a loss now what to do with that 5 lakh non-custom paid vehicles because no agency, no organization is taking any initiative to regularize those. So these things need to be resolved at the national level and the provincial level. We need a border control regime where instead of our research, during the course of our research, we came across there are 6 agencies which were monitoring one border control, and according to another research, 13 government entities and agencies involved in border control, Torkham. Now, this is a veritable mess. It needs to be under single control, possibly FIA, customs, and FC or police, so that the propensity to benefit from the rents that are accruing is minimized. So already I think government is seized with this issue, and PALPA is creating a single border transit control mechanism, but needs to be accelerated to my mind. Without that, we stand no chance. Role of Afghan interim government in reining in the TTP. So Pakistan needs to, we have no other option. We just cannot create another line of control environment on our Pak-Afghan frontier. So there is no choice but to keep positively engaged with them, impress upon them, give them plausible deniability even if we operate inside their territory against those bases of TTP. And efforts should be continually done to dissuade them from helping TTP. At the moment, it's a reality that TTP is getting succor and being helped. So with this, I come to the end of a long peroration, I guess, and it will be my pleasure to invite Special Representative on Afghanistan. And we would not only like his comments on the book and the research effort, but give us some nuggets on Pak-Afghan relations and how things are going from here onwards. Sir, over to you.
Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, and I recognize General Hilal, then Colonel, when we were together in New York. And those were the momentous days. 9/11 had happened. Before him, later General, but then Colonel Javed Iqbal. He was our military advisor when 9/11 happened. And when I entered my office, so he said, "Don't you know what has happened?" I said, "No." He said, "Twin Towers have been attacked." And on his TV, then we were sitting there, and I had to retrieve my son who was in school. And it took me 4 hours to bring him back to my apartment. And it was only a 10 minutes drive, but it took me 4 hours because everything was, in fact, it had come to standstill. It's just en passant, I had to say. I must congratulate not only Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, who is a moving spirit, and he has, in fact, had an excellent leadership he has provided throughout, and also to Muhammad Nawaz, Shiraz Sheikh, Furqan Khan, and Noorulain Naseem for an excellent job, a comprehensive study done so far as TTP is concerned, and offering practical steps what to do. The issue is that when there is a problem and when you are dealing with tribal belt, and it is when you say tribal belt, it also automatically extends to Afghanistan. And what happened in 1979 was not Pakistan's making. It was thrust upon us. We did not request the Soviet Union to come to Afghanistan, and we did not request over 5 million Afghan refugees to come to Pakistan. So these were the external factors which, in fact, led us to make some policies. Now, what was that policy? And don't forget that at that point of time, when there was Cold War at its peak, the popular theory was that Soviet Union wants to reach out to warm waters, and the warm waters, nearest warm waters, were available in the Persian Gulf and and Indian Ocean. And the only route was through Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now, it is, also irony of, you can say, the times have changed. Now we are the same people, same policymakers, and they welcome nearest port to the warm waters. That is not only for Central Asia, but also Russia would also be welcome. So times have changed. When we talk about ideologies, they also keep on changing with the passage of time. And so our ideology, way back in 1979, we were the bulwark against the Soviet onslaught, and we were the bulwark for the free world, and we wanted to defend the free world. And mind you, who was ruling Pakistan then? A dictator. So a dictator was a bulwark to defend the free world. Isn't it ironic? Does it sound strange? But we are talking about realpolitik. In realpolitik, you deal with the situation as it emerges. So as I said, and I repeat, that we didn't request the Soviets to come to Afghanistan, and then subsequently the refugees to come to Pakistan. And everything is now etched, everything is now in fact rooted from that day onwards. And now it's 45 years, 3 generations of Afghans have born and brought up in this situation. They have not seen peace. And when you say that they have not seen peace, we have also not seen peace, at least the adjacent provinces of Pakistan. KP is on top of the list, but Balochistan is also not lagging behind as far as unrest is concerned. It has sapped our resources, whether you want it's socioeconomic and as well as actual resources. Our human talent has been wasted. It is wasted in our war, which in fact is revolving around how to survive. And our subsequent policies, in fact, have contributed to that. For instance, when 9/11 happened, these were the same mujahideen. Their common refrain when they wanted to counter the government after 9/11, that we are the same mujahideen. It's you who have taken the U-turn, not us. Now you are telling us that we are terrorists. And this narrative was popular on the ground. When we are discussing about the newly merged districts, well, I don't know what kind of exercise that was undertaken with 25th constitutional amendment has been brought in and FATA has been merged into KP province. But what actual steps have been taken to ameliorate the problems of those people? And the promises which were made while the exercise of merger was carried out, what happened? It's quite obvious for us to see. It was 1 trillion rupees were promised over a period of 10 years, beginning from 2018 onwards. And hardly less than 77 billion rupees have so far been spent. So it's a pittance. And when you are not giving the necessary resources to the people in time, so what options they have, where they can go. For them, and when we talk about TTP is a recent phenomenon, 2007, but they were already available in the market. They were fighting. our authorities were negotiating with them. And Americans were not in a mood to give any concessions or talk about reconciliation. Reconciliation, when we talk about in Afghanistan, was also directly impacting our tribal areas. Don't forget that. Reason that in 2002, when Taliban wanted to sign the surrender document, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld said, he just rejected it. He said, we are not in the business of signing documents. We are done with the Taliban. And it was the same United States when in 2010, in the London Declaration, they first time agreed to the word reconciliation with the Taliban. And it took them another 2 years to allow opening of Doha office of the Taliban in 2013, and took another 8 years of dialogue, which was made public in 2018, that they are negotiating with the Taliban, and which culminated into Doha agreement in February 2020. What I'm trying to say is that in the tribal warfare or in the tribal lexicon, time actually may be of essence for the modern world. In the tribal setup, they have the time. And it was during the past 1 decade that the Taliban's famous saying that the Americans may have watches, but we have time, was so flashed all around the world. And they proved it. Reason is that they are the sons of the soil, they live there. So apply that to our tribal areas also. What do you want out of them? Now, the basic factor which I have now studied is that these TTP people, actually, they got the recruits just by putting 2 conditions. Either you pay money for our operations or give 1 mujahid for the movement. So the families had little choices. And what is happening now is that whenever they launch any operations, so they have the sanctuaries, and they have sanctuaries within our own borders. There may be 5,000 or 6,000 TTP people in Afghanistan, but I think their success only depends on the sanctuary available to them. Unless you smoke out the sanctuaries, this operation will take much longer time. But once you dry out those sanctuaries, I think then the job would be easy. But how you can dry out, how you can smoke out those TTP people would require many other steps which have been quite ably highlighted in the study. Then when the word recrudescence, when you use, it means recurrence again and again. Why it is recurring? Recurring because correct medicine is either not given or not given on time. Therefore, you don't have the desired results. So the disease comes up again. It recurs. And this recurrence is actually damaging. And there's urgent need to address that. For me, the foremost thing which can actually address the issue, the entire gamut, the entire unrest, not only in the tribal areas, along our borders, or inside the country, is the rule of law. Everything flows from the rule of law. You apply it in any section of the society, on any issue, if there is no rule of law, you will find malfeasance, you will find problems all over. You will not be able to resolve. Please find out. For instance, when you are talking about negotiating with the TTP, we did negotiate. There were 3 conditions. 1, surrender. They refused to surrender. you owe allegiance to Pakistan's constitution. They refused without pointing out which clause of Pakistan's constitution is un-Islamic. Third, they refused to face the law for the heinous crimes they had committed, like Army Public School massacre. They refused. So then the question arises, should a state allow non-state actors to have their sway? Should they be dictating the agenda? That is happening because there is lack of rule of law. And rule of law you have to apply across the board. We may have seen monarchies in our neighborhood, but they are peaceful because of the rule of law, whether we agree or not. We have seen dictatorships. You find peace because there is rule of law. It doesn't become, the rule does not become a family enterprise. It has to be applied across the spectrum, across the board. So please find out. When in the study, you will find out that where the rule of law is eroded and where the rule of law can be applied. That is the yardstick for me, that if you want to have desired results. Otherwise, we will be, in fact, moving in circles. And then we will be again having these debates, and we'll again coming out with these remedies. But if there is no implementation mechanism supported by rule of law, then probably we will not have desired results. So here, I think another issue which I wanted to highlight is that now we have to come out of my boys syndrome. We have suffered a lot because of this my boys syndrome. Colonel Imam becoming the symbol of Islamic movement. We have to come out of that syndrome. Live like normal people, please. Try to teach the people, your children, how to live, not to teach them how to die. And that will also come through by applying rule of law. This is I should say, my last message on this issue would be that this was erosion of rule of law, that we had people like Colonel Imam. Let's face it. And he would, in fact, look down upon if you questioned his motives. And he said, you, in fact, are not Muslims. I faced it myself. And what happened to him? He created the monsters, and monsters consumed him. That was only symbolic. The rest we all know. I don't want to go into details. The reason is we have to search our souls, that what we, in fact, have done wrong. And the solutions are in our hands. It's doable. It's doable, I can assure you. And I can assure you that from that, across the border, no one would dare to flout our laws if we strictly apply them. Such is the force of the rule of law. But what we have to do is we have to understand actually what is the force of the rule of law. Otherwise, you will find chaos. And this is what the TTP should, in fact, teach us. Teach us everywhere in this room and outside. And Maham is here. I request her, please focus on rule of law. That is most important thing which this country needs at the moment, domestically as well as in its relations with the outside world. And try, again, I repeat, try to teach our children how to live, not how to die. Again, thank you so much, sir. It was really a pleasure reading this work, and in fact, it freshened my knowledge about certain actors and characters who have been involved in this entire thing. But ultimately, what I have seen, and I have said the other day also, that during the past 45 years, it's being asked that what has been the failures of Pakistan policy about Afghanistan, or what after Taliban's resurgence, how do you see? I can only say that the only losers are the Afghan people, irrespective that who is ruling that country. A country with 97% poverty, out of which 52% are in fact dependent on international humanitarian assistance. And that ratio is growing. And there is actually, we should be now aware of the fact that if this abject poverty graph grows further, they will start leaving their country. And their first favorite destination would be Pakistan. So we should gear up for that, unless some sanity prevails across the border and they start addressing actually the people's problem, rather than giving a kind of skewed ideas about banning girls' education or women's right to work. And then, in fact, selling it as according to the Islamic tenets. They say it's according to the Afghan tradition and Islamic tenets. Afghan tradition, perhaps, yes, partly. But Islamic tradition, certainly not. And then they are, in fact, portraying a wrong model of Islam. In fact, you are defaming Islam. And that's why now what the kind of xenophobia you find around the world is because of such skewed ideas which are, in fact, presented to the world. So we have to actually, we are faced with not normal challenges. These are bizarre challenges. And you have to gear yourself with them. And you have to, in fact, dust off those gazetteers which talk about the nature of the people we have to deal with. Just imagine what kind of a people are we dealing with that you cannot give polio shots to the newborns, to the children. And we are talking about bringing peace to that land on both sides of the border. What kind of a people are we? And the policymakers. And we are an atomic power. I'll leave it at that. But again, thank you so much. Thank you so much, and wonderful study. And keep it up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. We also have with us the Chairman, Board of Governors, IPRI, Ambassador Inamul Haq. Sir, would you like to say a few words on the book? Okay, so we will first have a book launch ceremony. I would request the book to be presented to Director Research so we can officially inaugurate that. Present, sir. I would request the audience members to please keep their questions brief and short so we can get maximum number of questions. Also, please introduce yourself before asking the question. Thank you. Shabana Fayaz.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Always a pleasure to be part of the IPRI series, and congratulations, Dr. Wali and the host team. My question is, I didn't find anything, maybe I'll go into detail in the book, regarding the rehabilitation programs, because this is a subject that much talked about, and this is something that has initially been started, we all know, with the help of an NGO. So what is the status of that? Because, and the second question is, we all know where the Afghan policy comes in. And we, you have talked about the perceptions of the local. I've also done some work on the ideological imprints of TTP. People are very much, confused, and actually they are in the crossfire. And if the army is still here, that has done a lot of sacrifices, do you think there is not a role of the community and the political leadership, there's no political leadership really much there, to have in hand with army to make a much stronger footprint for peace?
Thank you, ma'am. Your question about rehab and de-radicalization centers. Due to brevity concerns, I did not dwell on that, but it is part of the book. I believe somewhere around 30, 37 page, it's mentioned. The initial de-radicalization and rehab centers were operated by Army in Swat. 2 such centers were created, and they were run, and they included psychologists also, medical experts also, religious clerics also. The objective was to give them psychological treatment, a little orientation of their ideology, and then some vocational and technical training so that they can become useful members. And once the operations were wound up, these centers have been handed over to the KP administration. So presently they are being run by that, and at the federal government level also, an institute has been established, which is under the ministry, I believe it is under Education Ministry at the moment. So it is having an oversight over those. And there is a need for more such centers, but in areas like South Waziristan, Tanak, the insurgency still is not at the stage where such large-scale centers could be opened. But those are already operating in Swat area, and I believe one in Peshawar also under the KP administration. Your second question was about the political leadership. This is the most important point, in fact. And all stakeholders, they repeated this concern. Of course, the political government at the federal level needs to take the ownership and devote the requisite amount of time and resources for that. It's not that they are not cognizant of the problem, it's just that their effort is consumed in so many other directions that they perhaps are happy to outsource to the law enforcement agencies and get over with. But the direction has to come from the political leadership. And the local government level, you have to reinvigorate. There was a local government act in 2013. Unfortunately, that was watered down in 2018. Section 30 and Section 40 was added. So because of that, the local government system further became ineffective. So there is a requirement that people should be given, they should be empowered at the local government system. In the merged districts, governance can only start if the civil administration and the local government starts operating. And the political government of the province, it invests its energies into that governance aspect.
Sir, would you like to add, Ambassador Durrani or Ambassador Inam? We can take the next question, who's third in the row.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. My name is Ali Jabir. I'm a defense and environment journalist from APP. Sir, the TTP deliberately, I would rather say, did target killing of Masharans and Maliks in these tribal areas. Those were not only Mashas, those were the symbols of unity in that particular society. At present, there are no symbols of unity in that region. So did your work try to study that aspect of this conflict as well? And how will those symbols of unity would be revived to restore peace and gain and win the trust of those people? Thank you, sir.
Yes, we did consult. We did discuss and analyze this. You see, this system of Maliks and Mashrans cannot be recreated as it was in its earlier shape, but there is a desire inside the society, inside the other stakeholders like civil administration and even the political circles, that some measure of stability by way of the local tribal leadership needs to be recreated. So those Malik systems, which was quite beneficial, and in many ways, you will be surprised to know Maliks are still operating there. Whenever IED blast takes place, the very first recourse, who comes to the help? It is the local influences. So they were eliminated by these militants and the other leaders. But there is a desire to recreate that kind of a system. But it cannot go back because you cannot turn back the wheels of the clock now. There is a new generation which we tapped into and interviewed and surveyed, which is studying in these universities here. They belong to FATA. They want to go back to their areas. So the young generation feels they are more digitally connected and mentally they are on a different wavelength than the older generation. They feel that that old system of Maliks, which was not very democratic and it was tribe-oriented, needs to give way to the democratic freedoms. Like if you start with the local government system, the local elected, maybe it is the local influential who gets elected, but it will get the sanction of the law, and the local government will have the sanction of the law, what Ambassador Durrani was also referring, rule of law. The funds would be given. So people at the grassroots level would be able to take care of their. But I agree, it's absolutely vital. This vacuum cannot be left unaddressed. And the tribal Maliks and Mashrans, they need to be brought back into that state of respectability and authority, maybe through local government system or maybe through some other instrument.
Question at the end, right?
Thank you very much. My name is Hassan Gilani. I'm from PTP World. Question is addressed to Dr. Janjua. Dr. Janjua, in the presentation, you have listed the lack of policing system, judicial system, administrative system as one of the main reasons behind the re-emergence of Taliban. Can we infer that the timing of this merger wasn't probably the best time, or you think that the step wasn't really a well thought out step? We could have done more before we went for the constitutional merger of FATA?
You see, it was an inevitability. It couldn't have been, indefinitely postponed. In 2013, the process started, and in 2016, it was given a concrete shape by Sartaj Aziz Committee report. Then 25th Amendment, it created merger, and the 26th Amendment created the local bodies system. Despite that, I used that word, but we did research which is given in this book also. Financial merger has not taken place because there are no instruments of governance as yet. One system of Rivaj and another system of Sharia and Muftiyan, that was very responsive to the needs, to the justice needs, to the administrative needs of the people of the area. That has gone. The alternative system, which is slow, painstaking, evidence-based, people are not used to that. That has not taken firm roots because they have not been able to even establish the courts there in those areas. So in that vacuum, there are certain voices, and we also recommend that some elements of Rivaj and maybe some elements of the Sharia, especially land dispute areas. There was a Act 2020, according to which ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution System, was started. There are mediators, they were created, But that system could not take off the ground because judiciary did not patronize it. Judiciary thinks that system encroaches on their domain. So ADR is not working. Your new introduced system is not working. People are fond of Rivaj, and they say that the 90% of the land that is disputed those disputes can be resolved at best through that Sharia-based system. So we need to make a kind of a hybrid and include those elements. And yes, I agree that this merger could have been more incremental. And if it is done hurriedly, naturally these problems would have arisen, those have arisen, and we are encountering those. And I believe that we can go towards the actual merger in an incremental manner.
The front, Janal Hilal.
Thank you. इस पॉइंट के ऊपर आई वुड लाइक टू ऐड अ कपल ऑफ थिंग्स वन दैट हमें अपने आप से पूछना चाहिए इज देयर एनी एग्जाम्पल ऑफ अ सक्सेसफुल मर्जर ऑफ दिस काइंड द आंसर फॉर्चुनेटली इज येस आई एम फ्रॉम Malakand agency. It was erstwhile Pata and provincially administered tribal area. And I, right from my childhood, remember there was very little rule of law. There was no stamp paper, there was no court, there was a political agent sitting in Malakand. He would decide on whichever way he could decide. And Rivaj was there, and basically, Badal, you are wronged, you go and wrong the other guy, and the justice is served. We have seen those things. In our villages, large tribal fights used to take place. Then the courts came in. Now there is stamp paper, now there is rule of law, now there is a booming tourism industry and everything. So there is an example in which a merger can take place. The question asked is extremely important. Was it the right time? And very aptly answered by Rashid that it should have been done incrementally. If you want to switch it up like this, okay, it's FCR now and no FCR now, then you have to pump in a lot of money. You have to build courthouses, you have to build police thanas, you have to build laboratories for forensics, and so that you start dispensing justice quickly. We pulled the theoretical switch up, but as Asif Saab has brought up, no money came in, and hence this disconnect took place. So it should have been done incrementally. You see, there was a big segment of population which was fed up with FCR. Ye Rivaj, Shivaj, they look very attractive right now. It was a system which was corrupt to the core. The Maliks would receive unaudited funds which nobody knew कि वो किधर जा रहे हैं. They would just for personal enrichment and stuff like that. लेकिन ये the FCR was an economy measure taken by the British. They didn't want to spend money, so they just brought in a hodgepodge system which worked for almost 60 or 70 years, and you couldn't have continued. I have been there. I spoke to one of the college students. I said, why are you against FCR? He said, sir, we don't have three things. We don't have a wakil, we don't have a dalil, and we don't have an appeal. And I was stunned, the simplicity with which he put it. वो कहते हैं हमारे तो कत्ल कोई करता है 50 बंदे किसी और के पकड़ के आप 15 दिन जेल में रखे हैं, the issue seems to be resolved. So it can't happen like that. You have to have a political will की बात है, and political will is not a word in the book, it is money. Pump in money, create the infrastructure, bring in the rule of law, and everything will fall into place. Thank you.
We have a journalist from Russian news channel at the end.
Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for ability to question the participants. My name is Ruslan Bekniyazov. I'm from Itartas News Agency from Russia, and my question is about that Pakistan for a long period of time is trying to promote TTP as one of the international terrorist threats. Pakistan participates in many formats, including Moscow format, including format of Afghanistan neighboring countries, in order to also counter TTP. Could you please elaborate what steps, what measures are already taken at international level to counter TTP, and maybe what difficulties Pakistan faced during the negotiations with the neighboring countries? Thank you.
Ambassador Durrani.
TTP, by and large, has been declared a terrorist organization, although under 1267 committee, it has yet to come about. And I think the grounds have been prepared that in the coming months, and when Pakistan also takes up the membership of the UN Security Council from January 2025, and Pakistan would be the member for 2 years, this would further intensify. And there is also, Pakistan has gathered enough support from the West and from our immediate neighbors, including Russia. They have been declared as terrorist organizations. I can say for the timing about that, but as it progresses, then yes, there could be new developments. Moscow format, in fact, it does talk about terrorism as a whole. It does not specify organizations. But simultaneously in our bilateral and, of course, in the closed doors, these issues are discussed. It is just not TTP, but ISKP is also a veritable threat for everyone. They have had their activities in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, but it expanded to Iran and Russia. And then there are concerns that they may go elsewhere. So there is real challenge and threat that exists.
Even the latest report by UN Analytical Support Monitoring Committee, UN Security Council, it says that in Afghanistan, Abu Ikhlas Misri, Al-Qaeda leader, he was helped actually by Afghan interim government. And they also say that they are giving funds to NGOs, the international community, which is being siphoned off to their fighters. So those issues are there, and ISKP, some say in that report it was 5,000 to 6,000, and some reports say that they are just 2,000 to 3,000. They are also emerging as a big danger. Al-Qaeda, according to that report, is exercising a strategic patience. So come to think of it, that word for Al-Qaeda, but a bigger menace is emerging, that is ISKP, which is threatening, areas like Central Asia. They have had their actions in Russia also. So this whole ecosystem of terrorism, which is emerging in a country where humanitarian concerns are foremost, this should ring the alarm bells for the whole world. And a better engagement strategy with Afghan interim government by the international community and the regional countries like Russia, China, they must lean on this regime to rein in the elements like TTP at least, so as to have a regional consensus and a peaceful neighborhood for better stability, which is in the interest of Russia, China, and the whole Central Asia.
We'll take 2 last questions from the youth, I would say. Sir, questions, please.
And it's my time. Please seat it. Please seat it. Okay. I gave 3 of the theories: Alami Ummah, Muslim Ummah, and youth political empowerment. I am of the view that a problem lies with when 3 believers went into an agreement, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, that the godless society is heading towards Asiatic states where you can say religions are at the threat. Why not we are to eliminate that one? And then in 1974-5 around, you can say Daoud's government has been made weakened, and then he had been brought into, and you can say weakened that way. After, you can say, this all 3 believers agreement, they based and trained 50 lakh around Mujahideen. And it was all error of judgment. And Russia is very strong, second bloc, parallel to capitalist bloc, and it will take 30 years to got broken. And it took just 10 years and Russia got collapsed at economy, but brain was not broken. And they returned, and when then onslaughts, we started facing problems and challenges like TTP violence and such miscreants and intersectionalities, all are due to we are not addressing the problem of education as civilization. Why we went that agreement, and it happened that as 9/11. 9/11 was also an error of judgment. They gave government to Taliban, that they gave lives and they have the majority in the Afghanistan and they have the right to rule in Afghanistan. But the way they stepped into and gave very heinous and extreme kinds of reforms, that led the authorities to put their hand over their heads, what we did it all. But after that, the 50 lakhs and 30 lakhs and 20 lakhs, all they went into explosions and become a problem for the Pakistan. Pakistan is now heading towards integration of the values and standards. And particularly when Musharraf came into power, he worked on liberalization and making of Pakistan as to how to par with the rest of the world. Sawal is this is done, there is a thin line difference between Pervez Musharraf and Ashfaq Pervez Kiani. Pervez Musharraf was of the opinion we are to go for war and terror against the tribal mindset. And Ashfaq Kiani was of the view we are not to go for war and terror, rather we are to stop it and we are to educate the tribal mindset. We are to change and we are to base the infrastructure. So this is three believers, and we entered into that agreement. It was our you could say, right decision, and we are facing this one since 1979.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Short answer ये है कि General Ashfaq was equally cognizant of the threat of TTP. तो उन्हीं के दौर में ये operations शुरू हुआ था राहे निजात, which very successfully liberated areas till Bannu. It was a very difficult operation. So he believed and he prepared the army for the next phase, but then his tenure was up. तो वो इतना उनमें approaches में कोई खास difference नहीं था. Regarding आपका वो जो Asiatic मतलब Jews का और उसका consensus, तो उसकी मुझे समझ नहीं आई कि वो क्या सवाल क्या है मतलब कि
Thank you, sir. We have to go forward. Please, sir, can you?
Thank you very much. Ambassador, I'd like to actually point towards a very important aspect. The three constants of history, geography, and a tribal culture, they remain unchanged as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And we have witnessed two superpowers failed, at least in our lifetime. We saw that, and there were so many invaders in the past which also had to, undergo the same fate. And an unstable Afghanistan in a present situation is likely to persist. I don't know till when. You also alluded to this particular aspect. And whatever is happening to the areas which are actually contiguous to the Afghan border and the wider Pashtun belt with a very seamless integration between the TTP and the TTA, we find the Afghan recruits being operating in Pakistan, so many footprints seen. So I think the major, this unstable Afghanistan is one major problem, and our actually this whatever predicament that we are facing, it resides into the instability of Afghanistan. And it forecasts a very, very grim scenario. What all we are talking of actually transforming our areas, actually even if theoretically we are able to do it, it would still open the doors for the influx of people from Afghanistan coming to these areas because they will be probably socioeconomically very better off. So it's a paradox. So what do you think in terms of time period or whatever it is, that how do we see Afghanistan evolving in the next, let's say, 2 or 3 decades that could actually influence onto the solution that we are looking towards our side of, these merged districts?
Thank you, General Sahib. I have no answer. Reason is that Afghanistan has never seen peace in its entire history, except for Zahir Shah's 4 decades, 1933 till 1973. Onwards, the rot started. And then what we see today is there. And even before Zahir Shah, those were palace intrigues. And when we talk about first Afghan war, second Afghan war, they may be victories, but actually then British war of retribution was much worse. And they made the successive Afghan kings begging for their lives, for their thrones. So there was no peace then also. And when you come to post-Soviet era, Soviet Union was not defeated militarily. It collapsed because of its own economic liabilities. And then Americans did not leave because they were defeated. They didn't want to stay here. They didn't want to spend $50 billion per annum. And when Trump asked his generals that, can you win the war? They said, it's a big challenge. He said, then why am I wasting my blood and treasure? So he left. So they left. Otherwise, they killed Mullah Akhtar Mansour pinpointedly in such an accuracy that his driver was unscathed when he was killed. So they had if I'm not blasphemous, they have got the godly powers. If they wanted to kill, they can kill anyone. Like Aman al-Zawahiri, they killed. So that is that aspect relating to security and all that. When you come to Afghan society itself and Pakistan, of course, there are common ethnicities on both sides. And this is a unique border where actually ethnicities are on the border, which is unique, which is you don't witness with Iran or Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, or China. So again, there is a symbiotic relationship. For instance, Ashraf Ghani, when left, you think that he will ever come back to Afghanistan? And he would still the cheeks to say that I'm the ruler or I am the leader of Afghanistan? No, because the common refrain is, Ghani Gorekht, he fled. So this in the Chaykhanas, this is the history. So in that kind of history, which is mostly verbal, on both sides of the border, this will be played out. So what TTP is doing, or what TTP is actually, it's the payback time for the TTA to the TTP. They were supporting when the Americans and NATO forces were in Afghanistan. So the TTP were giving them sanctuaries, supporting, and they were fighting shoulder to shoulder with them. And now that TTA are on the saddle, they are in power, so they are accommodating them because they are ideological cousins. And then, mind you, those Taliban, perhaps right now, out of courtesy or diplomacy, they would not be saying, but there are many Taliban who have in fact written and they are spoken against Pakistan after the 9/11. And I think that psyche still remains there. More importantly, that in Afghanistan, it's a passion to abuse Pakistan. That has not gone. And forget about, even when we talk about the Mujahideen period, when we supported them for 45 years, when they got the chance, they actually dished us because it's the mindset. And this is the same mindset that when you start doing these merger exercise through 25th Amendment, for them, their case gets weakened and eroded. That is an exercise. I didn't want to discuss it here, but there is also, that aspect is also alive for them. So it's I can't predict next 20 years. I can't predict next year what will happen there. So we are talking about Afghanistan. There's no Islam, if I may be forgiven. It is all power play. and it is the religious monarchy which is ruling in the country, like here or in Iran. Only difference is that these religious monarch would not transfer his baton or his throne to his son. Only differences in the theocratic monarchy. Otherwise, they are monarchs. They can veto anything. So in that kind of an exercise, within the tribal setup, when we talk about if a tribe does not get its due share, I can assure you, even those who are right now siding with the government, they will turn against them. They will only look for the right price they have. So unfortunately, that land has been sold by its leaders, by the warlords and all that. And now what we are facing today, it's quite obvious. It is not a positive, it's not an encouraging scenario for us. So what we have to do is we have to manage our affairs with that country. Don't expect that we will plan. Oxford and Harvard plans have failed in Afghanistan during the past 2 decades. So we want to make plans. Actually, we will have to deal with them. Deal as per the situation, but according to the tribal ravage, because it has not gone. It has not been wished away. It has only been replaced by mullahs. But when it comes to ravage, they will not give inheritance to their daughters or to their sisters in the property. Then Islam, they forget about Islam. So it is going hand in hand. It is an Islamic system according to Afghan characteristics. So here, I'm sorry, I will disappoint you, but what will happen in coming decade or 2 decades, it's difficult. Because if such situation continues, I don't think that stability would come to that land anytime soon.
We can take questions together, starting with the youth. So last two questions together. Okay, last 3 questions.
My question for the esteemed panel is that while Pakistan is dealing with the TTP, what role can foreign powers or the global powers play while Pakistan playing a role against TTP, particularly the United States? As we know that we are undertaking a military operation and Pakistan being an economically weak country, how, as we also know that the Taliban are the leftovers of the USA, how Pakistan is engaging with the United States, and if yes, how are they engaging?
Question at the back. Right.
अस्सलामुअलैकुम सर, मेरा सवाल एम्बेसडर दुरानी से है। सर, पिछले टीएलपी का मसला काफ़ी सालों से चल रहा है और तालिबान से पहले वहाँ पर गनी गवर्नमेंट और करज़ई गवर्नमेंट यूएस की मदद से वहाँ पर थी, लेकिन उसके बाद उनका जो मेन लीडरशिप थी उनका ताल्लुक वहाँ से काबुल और उसी रीजन से था। लेकिन अगर हम देखें उसके बरक्स तालिबान गवर्नमेंट उनका ताल्लुक है शुमाल से, जिसमें कंदहार आ गए, रुज़गान आ गए, संगीन हो गया, इस तरह शुमाल के इलाकों से हैं। इवन सर उनके जो अपने मेन लीडरशिप है वो भी या बारगज़ई या सागज़ई लीडरशिप जो कास्ट वो भी पावर के लिए लड़ रहे हैं। तो सर पाकिस्तान को काबुल के साथ टीएलपी के मसले पर बात करते हुए नेगोशिएट करते हुए मसला होता था, या कंदहार के साथ बात करते हुए नेगोशिएट करते हुए काफ़ी मसला आ रहा है टीएलपी को लेकर?
TTP.
ऑब्जर्वेशन थी कि किताब के मुतालिक कोई सवाल करें।
Last question at the front.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। I have a question, Ambassador Durrani साहब आपके साथ, again related to TTP and the future of the region. सर मेरा पहला question ये है कि in this book we haven't dealt upon and discussed the the NATO weapons that TTP is basically using that were left, and they basically took over, and you basically meet a lot of international stakeholders और काफ़ी आपकी conferences वगैरह भी होती हैं, and obviously US counterparts are also coming to Pakistan. तो इस इशू के ऊपर कोई डिस्कशंस वगैरह हो रही हैं एनी इन रिगार्ड्स टू एनी बाय बैक ऑप्शंस या एनी weaponry that can be provided to the Pakistan security stakeholders को so counter किया जाए these long range weapons that they're using to inflict grievous harm on Pakistani security forces. और दूसरा question sir ये है कि ISKP की जब तक बात आती है then international community is on one page and they basically see it as a threat to Europe as well as the US. और सर ने जो बात की थी अभी UN जो रिपोर्ट है sanctions committee की, and that is also like clearly stated that TTP is getting a lot of support in terms of ideology, in terms of training, in terms of funds as well from Al-Qaeda, which obviously, according to the Doha Accords, is one of the conditions जो तय हुई थी between the Taliban कि वो Al-Qaeda को कोई support वगैरह नहीं देंगे. और वो ये जो रिपोर्ट सर ने मेंशन की है that also states कि 2 या 3 साल का टाइम लगेगा before Al-Qaeda and all of these other cross-border terrorist organizations can inflict attacks in EU as well as the US. तो जब आपकी discussions होती हैं with, especially I basically keep on saying US counterparts because उनका हमेशा interest रहा है in terms of counter-terrorism when it comes to Pakistan. तो क्या इस तरह की कोई discussion हो रही है कि again I basically feel that Pakistan can be a bulwark against ISKP, or in return Pakistan is asking for international support in countering TTP जो कि अभी तक जो international community है वो कहती है कि पाकिस्तान का internal issue है.
Someone from the back row asked about Afghanistan, American support to Pakistan. Yes, you see, American interests have waned. So their interest has shifted from South Asia to East Asia, South China Sea and Asia Pacific. The only interest they have here now is perhaps some unwinding of their humanitarian NGOs who are already engaged, and the monitoring and counter-terrorism cooperation. So Pakistan already is in touch with them, and as far as the counter-terrorism cooperation is concerned, that cooperation is between their military and our intelligence organizations. That is there. Then there's a Doha process which is being, under the aegis of United Nations. The latest iteration, Ambassador Durrani can better articulate. So those issues which were contentious like education and other inclusivity of the governance were not discussed because this Taliban government, AIG government is averse to discussing those things. So only counter narcotics and humanitarian aid. So those, and economic and trade, that was discussed. So American interest is not very strong now. The only interest they have is perhaps to collaborate with Pakistan in some intelligence sharing and oversight. So for the rest, I would request Ambassador Durrani to take on.
Thank you. In fact, I would prefer that if we limit our questions to the book itself. Because what I am discussing with the Americans or others is not here to be discussed in the public. And more importantly, with regard to one interim government in Afghanistan, they are a reality. You have to deal with them. There are no other choices. The whole world has acknowledged that they are a reality. There are good things about them. They have brought down narcotics to almost zero. It's 95% down. And then corruption is less, again internationally acknowledged. And they are now supporting their own employees, which are close to 1 million. Earlier it was 80% of the budget was borne by the US and allies in Afghanistan. They have increased their revenues. So these are the pluses. But minuses are, of course, the TTP is there, ISKP is there, Al-Qaeda is still there. For instance, Ayman Zawahiri was killed in the heart of Kabul. So that's the reality. So those things, I think Afghan interim government must be aware of that. They are aware of that. Those are the challenges for them also, because in the power play, even among the religious power centers, this is very serious, and it's a challenge for the Taliban also. So here, regarding weapons, and those were left, so after the Soviets left and there were man-pads, Stinger missiles and all that, that was Americans wanted to buy because they thought it is not good for them, and they bought those Stinger missiles. But the guns, I don't think are that serious for the time being. And you can buy them. So we can buy them. I think those are available. But this here is the serious, this is a serious statement. How can we buy them? Because there's smuggling going on. So what are border authorities, customs, they are doing? So you have to curb smuggling. That is very important. And then more than that, you have to root out the causes, which is very important. That you have to do. But of course, actual action will have to be taken, and that's being taken. It's not that it's not taken. And then TTP doesn't have any governing spaces. They indulge in hit and run operations. Not the situation is not as bad as it used to be that they were ruling Swat or Malakand. Not anymore. So this is also, we have to realize that it's a challenge, and it's being addressed. But yes, it will take time. Don't expect quick results. These are the time, and here, how to smoke them out? You and me can smoke them out. Don't leave it to the people, law enforcement agents. I give you one example. In Quetta, around 2011 or 12, a boy in his early teens came for 50 naans during the lunchtime, and in evening time he again purchased 50 naans. Normally they were buying only 4 or 5 naans, and then next morning also 50 naans. So the ASI of the police station, he came for the naans, and he said halawal. When he did the halawal, so the tandoor wala said that everything is okay, but I'm intrigued that this boy normally buying 4 or 5 naans. Today, since yesterday, he's buying 50 naans, and I don't see any movement. Where are the guests? I don't know. So that evening, a raid was conducted, and 13 suicide bombers, along with their gears, were arrested. So when you want to smoke out, you have to actually involve all the stakeholders, all those who are responsible, along with the people. So this is, don't leave it to the law enforcement agencies alone. If you are in London, you move 2-3 times in front of a house, I'm sure 100% that police will ask questions. Why are you roaming? So this is also very important. So we have to teach our people like that. Thank you.
I'll just add quickly here, Americans, you mentioned about standoff weaponry against us. You see, we have to take care of this insurgency ourselves, inside our borders. We have to do a better job of border controls, internal refugee controls, and our legislation may be to control this illegal ecosystem, severance of the link of the several stakeholders. For that to happen, we have to look inwards. When we converse with Americans, American State Department representative was here in a delegation of a think tank, and when we conversed and we put across our concerns about the armed caches, and they said that, look, once we left, it was virtually not possible for us to take all the weapon and equipment, and some was put here, and we actually handed it over to the Afghan government, not the Afghan government. Now it is up to them whether they hand it over to some non-state actor or not. Well, that specious argument you can buy or you can leave, but that's the reality. But now we have to do a better job of containing and countering this insurgency, and like Ambassador Durrani was saying, policing. You see, the world over, the first responder is police, counterterrorism. I'll give you an example. In 2023, during the course of this research, we came across this data that in KP, there were 4 incidents of terrorist attacks in 2023. Sorry, in Punjab. Whereas in KP, those were 479. There is no comparison. And once you see the capability of CTD KP and Punjab, there is a world of difference. The Punjab CTD, they have invested more. In KP, they just got an infusion of 400 million from Peshawar Corps to establish their offices. This is a degree of seriousness in a province which is taking the maximum beating of insurgency. Then lastly, economic integration point. There the panacea might lie in the long term. Trans-Afghan railways, there's a corridor to Kharlachi and from there onwards to our ports, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan pipeline. So those are the kind of economic linkages that might create stakes or disincentivize the Afghan interim government from sponsoring or helping elements which they think are their leverage against Pakistan. So the future belongs to that. And internal control, borders, there are models. Look at Iran. Iran is beset with 3 destabilized borders. We are beset with 1. With India, it is different. Iran has Syria, Iran has Iraq, Iran has Afghanistan border. But look, do they have this kind of problem? So we have to look inwards, and from therein, the impulse of this research and all those menu of options and remedies that are given to build our own capacity to become impervious to this cross-border ingress.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now request President Ipri to please deliver his concluding remarks. We have.
Sorry for coming between the lunch and the audience. I just want to say 2 things. एक तो ये जो recrudescence का लफ्ज़ है, इसमें जो last rapprochement की attempt हुई है, that has obviously failed, and we should know why it has failed. एक common refrain है कि you can't kill them all. You have to go reach out, pardon, और वो जो reconciliation है for a sustainable peace in our areas. And with this spirit, the last government tried to reach out to TTP and stuff and bring them and reintegrate them in the society. But let me give you an anecdote. There was a Masood bureaucrat sitting with me, and obviously we are both Pashtuns, so we were chatting in Pashto. And the moment this thing was brought in, we were in the assembly hall at that time. He told me in Pashto, okay, let them come back. इन्होंने हमारे elders को मारा हुआ है. You think in the name of rapprochement we will allow them to again roam around like this? And this was a very palpable feeling. And the guys who were across and who were to be brought in, they actually said to the government, okay, are we coming back with our weapons or without our weapons? And when initially they were told that you're coming without your weapons, then they said we are not coming because they're going to kill us. And if you let them come with weapons, then they merge again and they go back to their old ways. So that's just one point that I wanted to handle. One remark that you made, that sirf infrastructure cannot find this issue. That's correct. However, do not underestimate the power of infrastructure development. In Kuram Agency, there is a Shia-Sunni conflict which used to consume a lot of lives every year. And there was a very good political agent. He once told me that, sir, मैंने यहाँ पे 3-4 major सड़कें बनवाई हैं. और सिर्फ उन सड़कों के बनने की वजह से almost 80% deaths कम होगी. Because in a metal road they cannot plant mine or local made explosives and people would in high speed pass over them. So आप स्वात motorway की मिसाल ले लें. Swat was infested with rabid insurgency a decade ago. And जब से ये motorway बनी है, जब से लोगों की economic stakes बनी है, it is tremendous. I would like to end with complimenting this panel. It is amazing. I have for the first time realized the power of research. आपने जो team दिखाई, other than a hard-boiled brigade commander who is sitting here, बाकी सब बच्चों ने कभी फाटा में नहीं गए, कभी उन्होंने they haven't heard a bullet in anger. लेकिन what a fantastic research, what key points. Yeah, I think it's a compliment to this team.
I would request Ambassador Naam to please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Janjua and his team for preparing an excellent study. And I hope that they will continue to follow this subject as time goes by. I have a disclaimer to make. I'm not an expert on this subject. And I became aware only yesterday afternoon that this book was to be launched. And I was not told that I was going to say anything on this. My first remark is that none of the audience seems to have read the research book. We are talking in general of Afghanistan, of TTP, of Al-Qaeda, of everything under the sun, except what has gone into the research book. So please, when we next launch a book under IPRI, come prepared to ask specific questions about the book itself rather than making general statements on the subjects, which we can do ad infinitum. And we can spend the rest of our lives debating this subject. Yesterday evening, I was reading an article in which I found very interesting. It's in the Foreign Affairs of July and August, written by Lady Audrey Kurth Cronin, in which she talks about the end of Hamas, how Hamas ends. This lady apparently is a researcher in so-called, what we call liberation struggle organizations, and most of the world, Western world, refers to as terrorist organizations. But she also includes a number of hardcore terrorist organizations in that. She has prepared a database of about 457 such organizations over the past 100 years. And this is how research is carried out in the world, and this is how we should learn to carry out our own research. Learn from history, and then bring it to the present to see what lessons does history teach us to deal with the present and with the possible future. She has talked about 6 ways of how liberation organizations or terrorist organizations come to an end. And I will just narrate those 6 ways briefly and come to the end of my presentation. The first is success, where they succeed in achieving their objective. And we have seen that happen. In the case of Israel, there were terrorist organizations like Irgun, which were operating against the British and the Palestinians, throwing the Palestinians out of their homeland by killing them and by threatening them to leave. And Israel came into being. There were in Africa organizations like SWAPO in Namibia, like ZANU and ZAPU in Zimbabwe, like ANC in South Africa, which were supported by the world, were called liberation organizations and succeeded in achieving their objectives, which was independence for their countries. And they converted then into political entities, into political parties. Today, ANC has ruled South Africa for a number of years, SWAPO rules in Namibia, ZANU rules in Zimbabwe, and so on and so forth. And right wing continues to rule in Israel. The second thing that happens to them is that they descend into criminality, that they form alliances with local criminals and begin to exact a price for their criminal activity. And we have seen that happen in Pakistan, where the bhatta culture, where hostage taking, where kidnapping people, where threatening to kill people is used by terrorist organizations and other criminal bodies to exact finances from civilians and at times from the government as well. Another transformation is an insurgency. They start as a terrorist organization. They achieve some success with the public of that particular area, and they convert themselves into an insurgency and a rebellion against the existing government. And they try to carve out a niche for themselves as an independent entity. We are seeing that happen in Balochistan. And these are all lessons that have been gleaned from history. This has been happening for more than 100 years, 200 years in various parts of the world. This is not something new or singular to Pakistan only. The third thing is that they are repressed completely and eliminated. And the examples of those are in Chechnya, for example, either with the help of local population or with the help of local renegades or with the help of military force or with the use of other weapons. In Chechnya, the rebellion was totally wiped out. In Sri Lanka, the Elam Tigers were totally wiped out. So repression is one way of resolving a situation of dissent. And the fourth is decapitation. You kill the leaders and hope that no new leaders will emerge, or they will feel so threatened that they will not assume the role of leadership. Israel has been following that policy in terms of Hamas. In recent days, we have seen a spate of killing of leaders of Hamas, of Hezbollah, by Israeli security forces. Fifth is negotiations. When you begin to talk to, and we have tried that with TTP, and we have failed singularly. Perhaps because our negotiators were not good enough. They were not aware of how to negotiate. Perhaps they gave away too many concessions ab initio before exacting any concessions from the TTP. But the fact is that these negotiations did not succeed. And the last one is implosion. When a terrorist organization or a liberation organization explodes from inside. We have seen that happen in Kashmir, for example, in Palestine, where one organization breaks up. For example, the Palestinian Authority broke up into rule by Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and rule by Hamas in Gaza. In Kashmir, there's a conglomeration of bodies called All Parties Hurriyat Conference, in which 12 or 13 different parties have come together to try to form a united stand. And then there are also individuals and groups which are operating in Kashmir. So these are the 6 ways in which terrorist organizations or liberation organizations operate, in which they prosper, in which they nurture themselves, and in which they destroy themselves. And I think we need to learn lessons. One final comment. While this study is an excellent study, I have seen some other studies also by other organizations, like PIPS, and there are journalists who frequently go to Afghanistan, come back, and write articles and speeches. But I do not really see a coordinated effort on the part of all of these bodies to come together, to share their experience, and to come to a definitive conclusion as to what needs to be done. And I think it's time perhaps for IPRI to bring about these disparate people together at one forum, and let's hear them out, see what they have learned, and whether we can learn anything from them. And that should form the part of either an expansion of this present study or a more comprehensive study on how to deal with the terrorist threats that we face today. With these few words, I would like to thank all of you for your patient hearing.
I would request President IPRI, Ambassador Dr. Raza, to please deliver his concluding remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, after hearing so much, discussing so much, I think not much is left for me to say. But first of all, I'll again compliment the panel, the group which undertook research, the keen, inquisitive audience, and thank you so much for your participation, for your first-hand knowledge sharing with us. Thank you so much. When it comes to buying weapons or buying back weapons, or about the ISIK and other such organizations, I think two things are very important. Whether we have money or we don't have money, if we want to buy a Western equipment, we have been denied to buy it for last 2 to 3 decades. We cannot buy it. Smuggling हो रही है, वहाँ से किसी ने खरीदना हो तो शायद ले लें, but United States as a country or the Pentagon will never like to transfer their equipment which they left in Afghanistan is still there or elsewhere to share with Pakistan. We already have our hands full. Let's refrain from involving ourselves in Daesh or ISIK or ISIL or others. Yes, you're right. When it comes to their concerns, the concerns of United States and the Western allies, their concern is only those organizations which can harm them, their interest, their allies, their facilities, their bases. When it comes to Taliban, Taliban Afghanistan, Taliban Pakistan, or as we now say it, fitna in Pakistan, they're least pushed, least bothered. Perhaps they will like it to continue so that you're punished for their failures, which they want to dump on you and scapegoat you, unfortunately. We have been through this history of insurgency, internal unrest, right from 1974. There have been waves, different kinds of waves. Pakistan has been very successful in quelling these waves. But in long term, the solution is whole of nation approach. Unless we get together, go for inclusivity, तो इसका solution होने नहीं लगा. When it comes to the merger of the S-word FATA, इसमें दूसरी राय नहीं है कि अगर 100 बिलियन आपने 7 साल के देने थे और अभी गुजर गए तकरीबन 7 साल शायद 7 years, तो 7 सालों में आपने 7 बिलियन की बजाय 700 बिलियन की बजाय सिर्फ 70 बिलियन दिए, तो वो काम हो नहीं सकता. जैसे आप कह रहे थे कि जैसे भी करना है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, बाकी चीज़ें हैं, उनके लिए पैसा चाहिए. और पैसा was promised. Pakistan is rolling out money here and there. I think this is a very important area where Pakistan must concentrate, the government must concentrate and fulfill the promises. Unless we integrate them politically, economically, administratively, through good policing systems and district management, we will not be able to merge them the way we want them to be part of Pakistan or part of the whole. Respecting their rawaj for some time, yes, it will be a very difficult thing to actually keep their awaj and keep the laws. But I think it can be done incrementally, as it has already been said. Taking ownership by the political governments is very important. And last point which I want to develop on is the ambassador made one point, Ambassador Durrani, drying up the sanctuaries. I think that is very, very important. Right from after the 9/11, I've been saying it, writing it also. When people are illiterate, illiteracy, poverty, sense of social injustice, sense of deprivation actually makes them exploitable mess by the exploiters. They are combustible mess. So we have to take care of that. And it can be done, and there are some steps which are already on the way. I heard it yesterday on the television in the DGISPR's briefing that perhaps 94,000 girls and boys from FATA have been registered for free education, including their living, all the expenses already. And there is another program which is going on, Talim Sabke Liye. So I think that is a way forward. Inclusivity is the name of game, as I said earlier. With this, sir, once again, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And salam be upon Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, humanity, this country, and you all who sit here. May Allah bless Pakistan. May Allah bless you all, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the conclusion of today's proceeding. I thank you all for your patience and contribution.